The autumn air was sharp that morning, the kind that carried silence like a sacred weight across the marble stones of Arlington. The tomb of the unknown soldier stood in its solemn dignity, a monument that had watched countless sunrises while men in immaculate blue uniforms paced their ritual march, rifles gleaming under the soft light. Tourists gathered quietly at the edge, cameras lowered, as if instinctively aware that here was not a place for chatter but for reverence. Among them, however, a different energy brewed, unnoticed at first, like a shadow in the corner of one's vision. 5 men, faces masked in black, stalked closer, their steps too calculated, their eyes darting not with awe but with hunger. In the crowd, a woman gasped when she caught the faint glint of steel, but her warning never found her voice. She froze, one hand clutching her chest as the tallest of the masked intruders slipped a knife from his sleeve. His grip was tight, knuckles pale, each step angled toward the single sentinel on duty, a tomb guard, motionless, unblinking, the very embodiment of discipline. The guard's boots clicked against the stone, rifle poised in perfect rhythm, eyes hidden by dark lenses that never flinched. The intruders thought him just a man in a uniform, a soldier for ceremony, bound to protocol and incapable of violence. They were wrong. Every breath in the gathering stilled when the knife wielder lunged forward, his comrades spreading to flank, their intent written across the clenched fists and the pounding weight of their advance. The crowd recoiled, hands to their mouths, children shielded by trembling parents. For a fleeting second, time seemed suspended, the knife raised, the guard pivoting with machine-like precision, and the murmurs of disbelief that such audacity could shatter this sacred silence. Then, with a voice like thunder breaking over a valley, the sentinel barked a single command that seemed to echo through marble and bone alike: halt. It wasn't just a word, it was a wall of force. The masked men faltered, their momentum broken, as if they had struck an invisible barricade. The soldier didn't raise his rifle like a panicked man would. Instead, he shifted it with deliberate authority, the bayonet glinting under the sun, his stance flawless, his face set in stone. Tourists who had moments ago shrank back now stood frozen, their fear mingled with awe. In that heartbeat, the entire crowd realized what the masked men had not. This wasn't theater, wasn't a parade of tradition. This was a warrior, trained not just to stand but to fight, not just to march but to kill if necessary. The knife trembled in the hand of its bearer, his bravado cracking against the immovable wall of a man who had spent years preparing for exactly this moment. He had walked those stones in blistering heat and freezing rain, in storms and silence, every hour sharpening his discipline to a blade sharper than the steel pointed at him now. The intruders blinked, sweat beading beneath their masks, realizing too late that they were not the predators here. They were prey, cornered before a single strike could land. But fear has a strange way of twisting men, and desperation often masks itself as rage. One of the masked men shouted, a guttural cry that rang hollow even to his own allies, and he lunged again. The crowd shrieked, some stumbling backward, others gripping the hands of strangers as if proximity alone could save them from the unfolding nightmare. The guard didn't move hastily, he didn't even flinch. His rifle came up in a flash of polished wood and steel, intercepting the attacker's knife hand with brutal precision. The sound was sharp, bone against iron, a crack that reverberated through the still air. The intruder howled, dropping his blade, but before the weapon could clatter to the ground, the guard had already shifted his weight, rifle swinging in a clean arc that slammed into the man's chest, sending him sprawling. The other 4 froze, not because they feared the rifle's bayonet, but because of the man behind it. His posture never wavered, his breathing never quickened, his face remained as unreadable as the tomb he guarded. He didn't see 5 men, he saw 5 threats, and his body moved as though it had already rehearsed every step of the encounter 1,000 times. The tourists stood in wide-eyed disbelief, some fumbling for phones but too entranced to hit record, as though they feared breaking the spell of the moment. Another masked man stepped forward, but the first's collapse had stripped their unity. The guard's voice roared again, deeper this time, surrender now. And it cracked their will like glass. The men hesitated, exchanging panicked glances. Their bravado had withered in 30 seconds flat, reduced to trembling knees and darting eyes. Slowly, as though in a trance, the second man lowered his fists, and the others followed suit. Their assault had dissolved into defeat before it had even begun. The rifle didn't waver, the guard didn't blink, and the crowd, once terrified, now erupted into stunned applause. It wasn't just that the tomb guard had defended himself, it was the manner in which he had done so. With unshakable poise, with discipline forged in silence and solitude, until even armed attackers bent beneath the weight of his authority. What the intruders had expected to be an easy victory had become a lesson carved into stone, against a soldier bound by honor, 5 men with knives were nothing more than cowards destined to surrender. The sound of the crowd's applause still echoed faintly, but beneath it ran a current of fear and disbelief that clung to the autumn air. No one could process how 5 masked men, armed and determined, had crumbled in less than half a minute before a single guard who never once broke formation. The leader, the one who had brandished the knife, writhed on the marble floor clutching his wrist, his mask crooked and his breath ragged. He had come expecting to frighten, to dominate, but instead he lay like a child caught stealing in the presence of a father who tolerated no disobedience. The other 4 shifted uneasily, their hands lifted halfway as though surrender was both shameful and inevitable. The guard, however, didn't let the smallest flicker of mercy cross his stance. He remained an unmoving sentinel, rifle poised, bayonet glistening, a statue carved from duty itself. Behind him, the white marble of the tomb loomed, silent as always, as if the unknown soldiers resting beneath bore witness to the confrontation with an unseen approval. Murmurs rippled through the spectators, some whispered prayers of thanks, others clutched their phones at last, fumbling to capture proof of what they had just seen, though no video would ever convey the raw force of that moment. And still, the masked men hesitated, trapped in the invisible cage of the guard's command. Seconds stretched into eternity as the sentinel's words, "Surrender now," hung like thunder over their heads. Slowly, shakily, one man dropped to his knees, then another. Their defiance evaporated with every heartbeat, replaced by an animal instinct to survive, because in the cold black lenses of the guard's glasses, they did not see negotiation or fear. They saw the end, and it terrified them. Yet surrender is not a simple act for men who come cloaked in masks. Pride is a venom that lingers even when defeat is undeniable. One of them, younger than the rest, his breathing fast and erratic, tried to muster defiance. "You can't stop us all," he spat, though his voice quivered, betraying the hollow core of his words. The guard didn't answer, and that silence was more suffocating than any rebuttal could have been. He took one step forward, just one, and the sound of his polished boot striking marble cracked through the plaza like a gunshot. The young man's bravado shattered instantly. He flinched, stumbling back until his shoulders struck the cold stone railing. That single step, that single unflinching stride, was enough to crush the last illusion that they held any control. The tourists now watched in reverent silence, not daring to interfere, as though they too had been caught under the weight of something larger than themselves. This wasn't just a fight, it was a revelation. The 5 intruders had walked in as wolves, but the guard had shown them what it meant to stand before an unbreakable wall of honor and discipline. Within those 30 seconds, their masks weren't just fabric hiding their faces, they had become symbols of shame, of failure, of weakness. One by one, their knees touched the ground, the scrape of denim and leather against marble sounding like confessions whispered to the dead. The sentinel raised his rifle higher, bayonet glinting brighter, ensuring none mistook this for mercy. It wasn't forgiveness he offered, it was a command: obey or be broken. And as the last man lowered himself, trembling, to the cold stone, the truth burned in their eyes. They hadn't been defeated by bullets or blades, but by something far more frightening, the unyielding spirit of a guard who would rather die than allow dishonor to touch the tomb he had sworn to protect.